Hi, and welcome back to the Middling Along podcast. My guest today is Heather Jackson, co-founder of GenM. Now, Heather has founded several organisations such as the Women's Business Forum and the Balanced Business Forum, and spent decades helping organisations to draw out the best from their talent and enable them to reach their full potential, regardless of gender. Now, as co-founder of GenM, she realises that for the world to reap the experience, networks and skills that women of menopause age can bring, we need to ensure they're fully supported for their sake and ours. Welcome along, Heather.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be on. And also thank you to you for doing this podcast, because there's many women out there and many people who think about doing things and don't. And then there's those that do. And I've got to congratulate you on taking yourself into a
Oh, thank
position
you.
and promoting something that needs to be talked about. And midlife, as our report shows, the GenM Invisibility Report, we absolutely are an invisible audience, and it's only through people like yourself can we become visible again. So thank you very much for that.
Well, we're the generation that refuses to go quietly, as I'm sure we will talk about a little bit more in due course. But I'd really love to hear about your journey to launching GenM with you have a co-founder, Sam Simister, who's not on the interview. Sorry, Sam. Was there a particular light bulb moment for the two of you that convinced you that this was a good space to launch a business into?
Well, both of us have had successful careers in our own rights going through, and we've been of a privileged generation to be able to have that choice and control to take our careers to where we've wanted to go. Sam very much in the corporate world, and she's an executive at Innocent now. She's been there for, I think it's about 15 years and on the board. And I've had an entrepreneurial, successful career building businesses and working with corporate companies. So we've both been in a generation of women that we've been role models. We've moved things forward, and obstacles that, were holding women back in the past, when rightfully, it's about allowing the best talent to lead. So we were very much focused on our careers, on our lives, but also making change happen. And we were both, got to where we wanted to be in the careers. And I'd actually cashed in on my business. I decided I was going to have a Thelma and Louise part of my life.
Not the bit where you drive over the
Well,
cliff.
no,
But
but I
yeah,
was
no,
prepared to drive to the cliff and then back turn it around again, because I would like to
Oh, good.
see a non-menopausal version of Thelma and Louise, where they actually have that moment of turning the car around and going, no, this is my life now and this is going to be great. But obviously it didn't at that time, because I actually believe that it is written about two menopausal women, but they just didn't recognize they were in menopause. Anyway, moving on from that, I was having a Thelma and Louise period of life. I've been a single mother all my life of two kids, and rightfully and non-guiltily, it was my time to have my time. There were two kids who've grown up, got their own lives now, and left home for all the right reasons. I'd had an incredible career and done everything. And for the first time in my life, I got some cash in the bank as well. So it was like, this is my time. Anyway, I took a year out, climbed Kilimanjaro, Base Camp Everest on my bucket list, without being able to do a bucket list because I'd had a bad diagnosis. I was doing a bucket list because this had been on my list and I was going to go on and do it. But in that year, I started to feel really terrible. I was very emotional. I was very fatigued. And you might go, well, you've just been to Base Camp Everest, but I was incredibly fit. And we as women were astute. We know our bodies, we know our minds, we know when we're not feeling right. And I started to have incredible fatigue, where the doctors thought I got thyroid problems. Then I was over emotional. The kids thought I'd gone batshit crazy. I was just so over the top, and everyone was saying it was because I'd packed in on I'd lost my purpose in life. And I'm like going, no, my purpose
I've
in
just
life was
found
to
it.
sell my business and to get to this point. It's like, my God. Anyway, having had thyroid tests, cancer tests, because my joints and everything were aching, the dementia test, because actually I was having such bad brain fog with the boards I was still on. In the end, you'll have heard all the stories now, and everyone seems to be the same thing. I was diagnosed as depressed. I was getting put antidepressants, and actually I came out of the doctors almost laughing, because I'd gone 9 times to the doctors, and each time I wanted a diagnosis. I wanted to have something, because I knew I wasn't feeling right. And it just seemed quite laughable that my kids were in a good place, they were happy, I'd got my business cashed in on, I was having my Thelma and Louise time, and yet this is what depression looks like. And I was like thinking, well, if this is
It's not
depressed,
adding
then
up.
help anybody else. Do you know what I mean? But at that point, you're just going to go, just give me something, because I need to sort myself out here. Anyway, bumped into Sam, had lunch with her, and she said, my God, what's happened, Heather, to you? I'd lost a lot of weight. I was emotional. I'd lost my confidence. And this is a woman she'd seen 18 months ago, ready to, you know, live my life at the top. And I just burst into tears at the dinner table and I said, I've been diagnosed depressed and yet I don't think it, but I really aren't feeling myself. So she said, come out to Portugal. And so she said, I'm working there. So I went out to Portugal because that's what you can do when you've cashed in on a business and you haven't got a proper job. And whilst I was there, she said, Heather, I actually don't think you're depressed. I think you're perimenopausal. And I'd never,
And
ever
what?
heard the word. You know what I mean? So she went back into the office and I did as you do, went on a sunbed. And I took my laptop and Googled perimenopausal. And it was like, oh my God, I'm perimenopausal. I'm perimenopausal. I was so happy. It was like, wow, this is what I am. I'd got something like 28 out of the 32 symptoms I could see there. But it was like, it was just a clarification of
It's
you're
like the little
not.
light bulb
Yeah,
moment, isn't it? It's like,
absolutely.
why didn't anyone tell me?
Completely. And for a woman who'd had a career, who'd even thought about when she was having her kids and everything else, all my life I've planned everything I've done in it. And yet I felt completely angry at myself that I'd allowed myself to get knocked over by a bus that I didn't see coming when everything in my life I prepared for. And actually, when when we sat in Portugal over numerous bottles of wine, and she told me her menopause story, then we started to realize that if we as intelligent women, well, she's more intelligent than me, but as intelligent-ish women, and we could get knocked over, how on earth do should this happen? And my previous business had helped and supported 30,000 women take their careers from middle management forward with 150 global organizations. And I suddenly realized, if I'm feeling like this, how
Mm,
many women have we set up to fail, that they've now built the careers, they're now on a
at
trajectory,
this
I can be anything,
peak
and
time.
then
Yeah.
going to get knocked over. So both Sam and I obviously started talking more about perimenopause and how 3-4 years ago it wasn't the same as it is now.
Mm,
You googled it and it was just disparate and everything else, and thanks to people like Dr. Louise Newsom and Davina and everybody else, the case for the medical side is much more prominent now. Sorry about that with my words, but let's be honest, we didn't actually go to the doctors to find out about puberty. We shouldn't need to be going to the doctors our first port of call for menopause. And
mm.
actually,
Well,
just
certainly not
like,
9 times and
oh,
still not
absolutely
come out with
not.
an answer.
But equally, society needs to be better geared up on this. And then if we have big troubles with it, we go to the
Mm,
doctors. But menopause is like a marathon. And it can last up to 15 years. And I actually nonchalantly thought it was just that one day. Your periods haven't been for a year. And actually, how hard could it be? Your period stop, end of story. And
yeah,
do you know what I
done
mean? It was
now.
like, oh, get a life, Heather. It's not going to be that hard, menopause. I was never prepared for the up to 15 years of perimenopause, and never prepared for the fact it's like puberty. We actually, if anyone out there's had got kids going through teenage times and everything else, and we think back of how we were when we were teenagers, we accepted those. They were going to be monosyllabic, they were going to be spotty, they were going to slam the door, they were going to be angry, and actually we'd give them a cup of tea and a hug when they came out of the room or whatever. We supported them. You try being 53 years and monosyllabic and slamming the door and bursting in tears, it just doesn't have that same effect. So we started to look at, back to the marathon, why is it that everyone's taking us down the route of HRT? Now, do not get me wrong, HRT is for some people, and it can help, but it's not the one silver bullet. And
Mm,
actually, any woman here who thinks that going to the doctors and getting HRT is going to absolutely be the only thing you need to do, wrong. You've got to be better prepared emotionally, physically, and mentally. Let's remind ourselves that the change is the change. And why is it called a change? Because it changes everything, from
yeah.
the hair products we need, to the body care, to the clothes we might consider wearing, to the bedding we might need. If you're going to transition and have up to 15 years of your life in a transition, but be better prepared for it and make the experience better, you're going to have to adapt accordingly, just as much as you won't get up and run a marathon. You train for it, you prepare for it, you buy the right kit, including the trainers, you'd eat the right food, you get the right sleep. Well, actually, the menopause is no different. You need to look at, if we're going to be the generation of women who have the privilege to
Mm,
absolutely have the chance of living longer post pre-production than pre-reproduction, we surely want to live it to be the best version of ourselves and the healthiest throughout it. Because I don't know about you or any of your listeners, but I don't want a long life if it's going to be unhealthy and all. Do you know what I mean? I want to own my age. So Sam and I started to talk more about what could we do about perimenopause and menopause. And we got it down to the nuts and bolts that actually it's a societal issue, and we need to normalize the conversation. We need to normalize the conversation. The first thing we needed to do was raise the fact that there's 48 symptoms of menopause and perimenopause, when the average woman, never mind man, only know between 3 and 5. So how can we understand or activate ourselves onto something? How can companies understand it better? How can companies or brands make products that are going to help us if none of us really understand what menopause is?
Mm.
And it's 48 symptoms. So Sam and I decided that wouldn't it be great if, one, we could normalize the conversation by raising the awareness of the symptoms and supporting it better. Second point, normalize the conversation for society. And third, then actually celebrate this period of life, not look at it negatively, and actually reap the benefits of the women that we are, the most skilled, experienced, networked, not just in the workplace, in life in general, and actually have that ability to absolutely be at the pinnacle of our life, not at the end of it. So we then start to think, well, how on earth are we going to do that? And actually, we both had very brand oriented corporate careers, and the power of brands and the reach of brands from colleague to consumer is incredible. And if we could get these brands on board to understand that, one, we wanted to come on board to raise the awareness of menopause, but not just for their work colleague, for their consumer as well. Raise the symptoms, raise the awareness, and then commit to not only support and understand it better for that work colleague in the workplace, but look to your consumer. Look at how they needed to be marketed. Look at how maybe the services they needed to do. Look at how possibly we should give them better experiences. And I'll liken it to, that was a light bulb moment for the companies we're working with, is 2% of the population in the UK alone are pure vegans. Now you look at 2%, and you look at how much marketing,
Mm.
understanding, support, signposting, product creation, and development is done for 2% of the population. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong, it's absolutely right. But the supported, you learn even in your store experience. You won't put a meat counter next to the vegan counter because that's insultive. So, why in a store, when there's 20% of the population at any one time menopausal, why wouldn't you think about this audience, and why wouldn't you learn to serve it better and support it better? Even by, if you look now nonchalantly, how many of the big stores, if you go in to look for something, maybe you're looking for some supplements, and I'm not going to name a store or whatever, but you can go in and you're looking for a menopause supplement or something to help you menopause, and it's in the darkest, deepest depths of Peru, along with any period products they've got or anything else. But actually, they've put them in the darkest depths of Peru, when actually, if they really thought that this woman could be fatigued, she could be overwhelmed, she could be emotional, what are
Mm.
you doing to that woman when you're making it hard? You need the products at the front of the door with a big Belisha beacon, because believe me, you do not want a menopausal woman in your store having a breakdown. You want
Wandering
them in and
around.
out. Do you know
I've
what I
been to
mean?
this
So
already. Couldn't see it last time. Can't see it now.
but you know what I mean? So Sam and I decided if we could bring the power of the brands together, to bring them together and be the menopause partner of brands and unite them to understand this, come together, but help us with campaigns. They unite and work with us. They work with us on products, services, and campaigns inside their organization as well. And instead of having menopause as an issue that they needed to think for D&I, inclusion, and wellness, they thought of it as a
Mm.
business issue that impacts every part of their business, because 88% of menopausal and midlife women feel unseen by brands. And I don't just mean by unseen by products that they've got for them, but in adverts, in campaigns, and everything. So we could unite them to understand this audience better and serve it better. And so we built GenM, and it is the menopause partner of brands. We launched on the 1st of October. And as of today, 5 months later, we've got 60 of the most incredible brands on board, including Marks and Spencers, including Boots, including Holland and Barrett's and the Royal Mail. You name it, we've got them. Next have come on board. And you might be, and actually, if you think about that, that's a commitment from companies saying, one, we recognize that we've all got a role to play here. No one's got menopause right as society, but in our own way, we can actually work together on this and push it out and promote it. So, you know, be the change you want to see. We hadn't got the ability to make change happen within the menopause, but we had the connections and the acumen to build a business proposition around these brands to use their power to absolutely make change happen. And isn't that what we want to see? We don't want activism, we want collaboration in life, and collaboration delivers the results we want to see. So that's what GenM does. We unite partners, we give them incredible assets and products to actually understand this better. We handhold them right through their business, through every part of how to support it better for work, colleague, and consumer. And in our way, we're doing our little bit to make change happen. And we will be going global. It's many of the organizations now want in America, Canada, New Zealand. And you might go, well, that's not exactly global, Heather. No, we've got to go to the English speaking countries first,
Mm.
because of the culture and everything else, we seem to be ahead of the conversation in menopause. And don't get me wrong, our research, we want to be the most inclusive menopause partner of brands, because it's every woman and anyone in trans will go into certain parts of menopause, and we need to normalize that conversation and understand, regardless of your culture, your ethnicity, or your sexuality, we have to adapt it. But it will be a lot easier to roll that ball in America, where they're ready to have this change and everything else. But then we move across the world, then, because whether you're in India, Asia, or whatever, if you're a woman, you're going to enter menopause. And no, and I think sadly for many of us in life, we've actually gone into denial about menopause. We've pretended it's not going to happen, or it's going to happen to somebody else. It's not for us. And actually, it's the one thing, apart from death, we're guaranteed eventually. Every woman will go into menopause. And, on that sobering thought, let's stop actually denying ourselves it and actually look into it, prepare for it, and have a better experience. Because anyone can go and climb a mountain, but if you're wearing flip flops and a bikini, your experience might not be as good as if you got the right boots on, the right kit, and the right nutrition inside you, and you're prepared with your safety pack as well. That's all we have to do for menopause. And I say that's all. You've heard some horrific stories really recently of really bad cases of menopause. And we do need to make sure that those don't happen. Highest rate of suicide is in
Mm.
women in perimenopausal years. Highest rate of divorces and relationship breakdowns the same. But the average woman will say, my menopause isn't that bad. And I call out to any woman who says that to say, actually, it's 2022 now, and not that bad suggests it could be better. Don't
Yeah.
I deserve better? And don't I deserve to do something for myself and my family that will make me feel better and my work colleagues? And actually, in doing that for myself, we can actually encourage our employers and our friends and our partners to understand it better and help them understand it as well. So please don't think I'm on a nag here or I'm talking at your listeners, but I do ask that they become the change we want to see. This isn't just about talking menopause, man or woman. This isn't just about moaning about it or talking, negatively all the time about it. It's actually changing the awareness, changing the conversation, and actually having more people recognize that it's not a disease, it's a transition. And it's a transition that can impact us for many, many years. So make that journey experience better than you currently are having it.
Mm. You touched on the sort of suicide rate in this particular kind of demographic, and your last campaign actually was misunderstanding menopause shatters lives, and the inspiration for that was someone called David Salmon, whose wife tragically took her own life, and worked with you on that. What sort of response did you get to the
Oh,
campaign, and do you feel like those psychological symptoms are getting kind of the traction and the attention that they really should be?
they are slowly getting that attention. And again, we've got to be honest and we've got to talk about it. So the
Mm.
story of David Salmon and our Shattered campaign was menopause, misunderstanding menopause shatters lives. And David, to be fair to him, I mean, an inspiration. Excuse me, I've got hiccups. An inspirational gentleman who, in the first lockdown, his wife worked at Sainsbury's, absolutely had a normal life. Just went to Sainsbury's, did a job, came back to the home, and they were a happy family and everything else. And in the first lockdown, she started to get what they thought was mild anxiety. And obviously, David said, look, we need to go to the doctor with this. And the
Mm.
doctors obviously looked at, you were in COVID, your front line and everything else.
Mm.
And, maybe it's just everyone's anxious at this moment. Don't worry too much about it. Now, this is not critical of the doctors at this stage, and it's not critical of David, and it's not critical of Linda,
It
who
was an
unfortunately took her
incredibly
life.
difficult
But
time to
yeah,
disentangle those things one from
absolutely. But
another.
she had been having hot sweats and different things. But both her and David just thought, oh, it's the change and everything else. You've just got your hot sweats. And she just didn't open up and talk about it. She was more worried about the anxiety that was being faced. Anyway, sadly, 3 weeks after her appointment at the doctor's, she sadly took her own life from out of nowhere. And David obviously bereft with his family. But 3 months later, he sat watching Look North and a documentary about menopause, and he realized that Linda had been going through menopause, much more symptoms on the mental and emotional and physical things than he'd actually really warranted. And he broke down because he felt that had he known more, never mind Linda knowing more, then they could have supported each other through this, and possibly she may still be here today. And he wanted to do a call out, just as much as Rod Stewart's done recently, of actually saying we as men have a role to play as society. And, whether you're married to a man or in a relationship with a man, woman, or anyone, your partner has a role to play as well. But men are not part of this. We need them on board. We need them understanding, and they do have a role to play here, whether it be as a partner, a work colleague, or a friend, or a son or a son. We can't go through this alone, and the way that we can make change happen is not just talking about it medically and thinking, look, I'll sort myself out, I'll go to the doctor and it's between me and my doctor. No, this is actually something we've all got a role to play in, and we do need more men understanding of it and better prepared. And indeed, we can hopefully save more lives that way as well. But it's not just about saving lives, because, at the end of the day, we hope that there's not as many, suicide isn't, every woman on here who's menopausal, hopefully won't be at that stage. But men coming into the conversation not only can save lives, but it can certainly make lives better as well. And that's what we want. We want women to have a better experience of menopause today than they had yesterday.
And not everyone might particularly get to that breaking
Absolutely
point,
not.
but you
No.
can still have a really severe impact, whether it's, as you say, physical, mental,
And do you know what?
emotional.
You're so right. It's not any one particular symptom of menopause. It's actually the culmination of one after the other that it becomes a breaking point. Do you know what I mean? And if you're not recognizing it and accepting it and actually looking towards some of those symptoms and what might I be able to do for it, even I was one of these women who poo-pooed yoga. I really, really did. It was just like, you know, I hadn't got time for it. It was just like, who wants to learn about breathing out? Well, actually, you could breathe in, out, and get on with your job and get on with your life and run your kids and everything else. Actually, one of the biggest terrible experiences I had of perimenopause, and I had it without knowing I was in perimenopause, was I was rushed to hospital in Scotland. I was when I had my previous business, and I was rushed there with sharp chest pains in the middle of the night. I thought I'd got a boulder on my chest. I couldn't breathe. Everyone thought I was having a heart attack. I was rushed to hospital. 48 hours later, I'd been tested for. They indeed thought I was having a heart attack. Then they thought I might be on a stroke. 48 hours later, they came to the conclusion I'd had a panic attack. Now, please, this is not derogatory of panic attacks. This is my naivety. I thought panic attacks were for wimps, and I mean that lightly, so that it was like
Something
panic
minor.
attack. Yeah,
Yeah.
paper bag. Don't you get a paper bag and everything else? And I pleaded with the hospital to not let me out to my kids without giving me something more than a panic attack on the piece of
They
paper.
won't believe me.
No, but do you know what I mean? It felt pathetic, but actually, it's the most frightening experience I've ever had. And from this day now onwards, I will never ever underestimate the power of how bad a panic attack can be, and equally give it the respect it duly deserves. So I know I started talking about it lightly, but believe me, I absolutely understand. And once I start to research perimenopause, one of the symptoms is anxiety, low self-esteem, and it can go into panic attacks. And so for me, unbeknown 3 years earlier, I was entering it, and that was my trigger. Now, again, I went to yoga then, And it absolutely became, I went to yoga and then I learned to eat better. And nutrition and exercise have been a massive factor on my experience of menopause. And I would urge any woman on here who's struggling to actually do some of the things that you take yourself out your comfort zone, do some of the things like strength exercise, do the yoga, look to a better lifestyle of nutrition, because unfortunately our generation of women, and many of them will be on this podcast will relate, I've been through every diet in the world, from Atkins to Cambridge to cabbage soup, because our generation, we weren't brought up on nutrition information, we were brought up on calorie
Mm.
counting. And if you think about it, many of us have been in calorie deficit, or it's all been about the calories and the size that, what could we get into that size 8 or whatever we'd chosen it to be. We were never thinking about what actually we were putting in our bodies on a nutritional point of view. It was on the calories, and that has had a detriment to the way we live our lives. And actually, my body was nutriently empty. And
Mm.
without the right nutrients, I mean, you wouldn't put diesel in an engine in a petrol car. So unless you're putting the right nutrients in, how can we expect our brain to function better, our body to function? And I don't want to sound like a born again Christian, but actually, changing my lifestyle of my food has made a massive difference to my menopause symptoms. I've still gone on to HRT, and I'll confess that, not as a confession of, oh, I didn't talk about it, but actually I decided that if I was doing all the great things in it, if I could feel good, could I feel great?
Mm.
But I do know that if I hadn't, I think HRT would have only made me feel good. It couldn't have made me feel great. Combining everything together can make you feel great. And, some people are happy with just good, and that's
Yeah.
fine. But
I
if you
think
want,
that's yeah,
so
it's been a really interesting kind of journey doing the podcast and finding out about all of those sort of contributory factors, like you say, like the sort of the nutrition and the strength training, stress as well
yeah.
being another massive one. I mean, we're not all necessarily going to be able to extract every bit of stress out of our lives because, let's be realistic, that's not
I
going to
actually think
happen.
we need some as well. You know, let's be careful what we wish for. A little bit of stress doesn't do us any harm. It's like an adrenaline kick or whatever else. Do you know what I mean? So we don't want to actually live a very grey life or anything. These things are the bits that make our lives ups and downs and gives us a curveballs. But equally, we don't have to go on a roller coaster necessarily, when actually, if you just want to go on the sort of small ride of the children's fairground, you don't have to go on that big dipper if you don't want to go on it, if we handle it better.
Hmm. One of the things that you obviously look at with your partners, your founding partners, is the sort of marketing and advertising side. And I think that's, I mean, I hope that is something that they're looking to change, because so often we do get these kind of stock images of, sad women with head in hands or fanning themselves because they're having a hot flush. And I don't know, we
Well,
don't see
firstly,
ourselves in
yeah,
those
I mean,
images.
52% of our big research we did said that they just felt unseen in adverts and everything else. I mean, it's a massive side alongside being feeling like the brands were letting us down anyway. But it's not entirely all the brand's faults, and I have to hold it out here that if you go onto a stockpile of photographs like a bird in that,
Mm,
where they take all these things from, if they're not doing their own shoot, it's quite, even building our website, we struggle to get some
type
really
in
great
menopausal
photos.
woman.
Oh, do you know what I mean? It's poorly there. So there is a massive call out. But we as women in that midlife poet should be putting ourselves out for modeling and that, because you know they can only pick up models and everything else, and images if
Mm.
they're there to be taken. So we as midlife women owe it to the next generation down to show them what midlife women look like. And I mean that we're looking for authenticity, we're looking for difference, and we don't always just want to see a perfectly manicured 50-year-old woman. It's either extremes, it's either the fun, as you've said, and the hot sweat, or this incredible woman that we can't, many of us, aspire to look like or be. Do you know what I mean? So it's authenticity. And I think, like companies like Dove, when they did all their, the
Mm.
changing of the body shapes, I think we're very nearly there with the brands and everything else, but it is going to take time. And we've also got to remember, within these organizations and the marketing departments, there's not that many menopausal people in there. Do you know what I mean? So actually, you've got the young, vibrant crowd in there who actually have no idea what this audience are going through and don't see them.
Mm.
So we owe it to ourselves to be much more vocal and talking about why we need to be seen. And we are your customers, so show us your face of your customer, not what you think we look like, but what we do look like. It's
And do you think those brands are getting it? Are
well,
they
massively,
yeah.
massive. Well, back to that 20% audience share. You
Mm,
find me of a company coming out of COVID who doesn't want to understand any sector of their audience better and really dig deep and think, how can we do this better now? Because I think COVID has helped a lot of people think differently, whether that's at home or at work. And actually, how better can we live life? How better can we treat ourselves? How better can what's our purpose here, and what is my role in life? And I do think, whether it be the employer, the agency, or the ourselves as human beings, we're all looking much more deeply into that right now. And so I do think it will have a positive. Give it time, because campaigns and money,
mm,
and even products, it takes time to come through. But all I can tell you is the seeds are being sown, and if you sow the seeds in, my granddad was a guy, he was a miner, but he had an allotment, and he used to say it's not just about sowing the seed; it's about servicing it and putting it in the right conditions. Any seed will grow, but will it grow strong and beautiful only if it's put in the best conditions and fed and watered well? I can assure you now that there's many organisations, and 60 definite ones on our books, that are actually putting those seeds in the right conditions to grow and flourish. And so, whether it be marketing, whether it be servicing, whether it be signposting, whether it be product development, whether it be advertising and campaigns, you are going to see a massive difference. But they're only going to start really coming through in the 18 months, 2 years' time.
mm. Takes time for that all to trickle
It
down.
does. It does.
And what are your goals for GenM for the next kind of couple of years?
Right. Well, with GenM, I mean, obviously, we believe that we will be at over 100 brands by this time next year, and will be on the verge of going global with our GenM campaign, and drawing United the world together on this, and being the global menopause partner of brands. But what do I see in the short term as we're building with these partners? One, much more campaigns. Our campaign for October, for World Menopause
Hmm.
Month, will be an incredible campaign that unites the brands to actually push the message out. So you'll see much more awareness of menopause and the so what, and actually that relief that brands and organizations are behind this, not because they're feeling legislative or being dictated, but because they want to do it and they understand it better. I want to be able to walk into stores and things, and the future will be menopause aisles just as much. You've got a gluten-free and a vegan aisle.
Mm,
We want to see with GenM that the menopause friendly badge that we've created will, over the next 18 months, 2 years, by working with these organizations, be as prolific on products as a vegan and a gluten-free badge. Because once upon a time, you looked at a vegan product and you thought, oh, I can't have that, that's for vegans. Now you go, oh, I can have that, but it's also vegan friendly as well. Well, let's be honest, menopause hits us the most in untimely inconvenience. We don't want to have to find it hard to search out things. I want to be able to go into a store and see food that I could eat, but equally, if I want a quick ready-made meal, oh, you could have this or that, but that one's menopause friendly. Oh, I'll take that one because I know I'm going to have some healthy food in there that would do me good. It's not going to get rid of your menopause, but it's certainly not going to make it worse. And many of that, I want to go into a bedding shop and see, oh, this is menopause friendly. Oh,
mm,
that'll mean it breathes well and it wickers me. So if I get a hot sweat, I'm not going to wake up cold in the night. It'll dry it. I want to be able to put makeup on that actually isn't going to run down my face when I'm in a hot flush or whatever. So I want to find a foundation that is menopause friendly. Now, many of these companies that we're working with have got products that do this. They just don't
mm. So hidden
signpost them
away.
or bring it up to us because we're that invisible audience. So
Mm,
again, as I've said, for the future is the recognition that the change is not an old-fashioned word that we need to get rid of. The change is an incredible branded name that actually does what it says on the label. It changes everything. So by that, our future, the future of GenM and the world that we want to see, is one, that the conversation is normalized, two, that we actually can understand and support it better, and three, the biggest change that we want to see in the next 3 to 5 years is that we really do start to respect the audience of women that we are, that we're talented, we're skilled, and we need to be the best version of ourselves. We can be the best version of ourselves, and we can still be the great asset to the economy and society that we know that we are and should be. And it's time that we all thought differently about it. So and I'm not ready for being old yet, so we need another,
no, me
you know.
neither. That's a great tagline, though. It changes everything.
It
I
does,
think
yeah.
you need to
Well,
pat.
it just sums it up. It's back to that phrase and the fact that the menopause is the biggest marathon. You wouldn't enter it in a pair of slippers. Well, many women laugh and go, oh, I get it now. Just because you might start running, you go into a running shop, you buy the best pair of trainers. It's not going to make you Usain Bolt, but it might make your experience better, and you still go and buy them because you think, I want to have this journey, my feet protected, and I want to be able to run the best I can. There's nothing wrong with looking to menopause and going, what do I need in my
My
backpack to
toolkit
make
or whatever.
my
Yeah.
menopause better?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Heather, what a joy to talk to you. Your enthusiasm is just boundless. So I have absolutely no doubt you'll be achieving all those goals for the
Well,
next couple of years.
we have the energy, we have the desire, we have the passion, but more importantly, we've got the brands behind us now. And with
Yeah.
brands the size we have, you can't do something wrong if you do it in the right way. And our purpose is there, their purpose is there, and their commitment is there. So for any woman who's thinking that actually these brands aren't seeing them, they are seeing them. They're just working very carefully behind the scenes to actually do it right for when they can bring things out and do it right. So, and if you've got a brand or a company, or you're working with one that you think they could do better, politely go and suggest that they can do it better. If you're working for an organization that you feel that your managers might need to know about menopause, actually come on our site and download the free co-op guide to managers that will help any company. You can take it into your manager. And actually, you might say, oh, I'm not an executive, I can't make change happen. You can download the guide and you can take it to your manager, who can then take it to their senior manager, who can then take it to the executive.
Absolutely.
And before
Every
you know
company
it,
should have a menopause
yeah,
policy.
yeah, but at the end of the day, you can be a stimulator to making change happen. So let's not all think it's down to people like GenM or the Davinas of this world, or anything else to make change happen. Everyone on this call can make change happen.
So
And
true.
that's what we want to do with this podcast, invigorate them to go, what am I going to do to make change happen? So thank you very
Yeah.
much for
There you go,
having me on.
listeners. That's your call to action. Go download it. I'll put a link to the website in the show notes. You've got no excuses. Heather and I are telling you, go do it. Thank you, Heather.
All right, no worries. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to the Middling Along podcast. Do remember to subscribe to be notified when our next episode is live. And why not visit the blog at www.middlingalong.com to sign up to my newsletter as well. I do hope you enjoyed listening today. If you did, I'd be really grateful if you would consider leaving a short review, as that helps people find the podcast and helps get it noticed. Hope you can join us next time. Goodbye for now.